So one of the coolest experiences I've had visiting paint manufacturer was in January of 2016. I was invited to visit the manufacturing facility of Fine Paints of Europe, which is in Zwolle, in the Netherlands. I went with owner John Leahy of Fine Paints of Europe and also Chris Polidoro of Shoreline Paint. It was a great opportunity to really dig down and kind of learn how fine paints is unique. So I've been to many paint factories. Since 1994, I've visited probably 12 different paint manufacturing facilities. Cloverdale, Preservative Paint, Rada Paint, Benjamin Moore, Test Barn, Benjamin Moore, Sherwin-Williams. The tour at Wagenaal was unique because it's so completely different in the mindset of how the paint is manufactured. In North America, paint manufacturing standards are exclusive, which means the only standards that apply are that things that you cannot put in paint. You cannot put lead in paint. You cannot put a certain level of VOC in paints. Besides that, there are no standards. It just what you can't have in the paint. Besides that, I could go to a farm here in Vermont and get some milk and glycol and water and chalk and make a paint and call it Vermont's finest paints. I mean, you can. You literally, you can call, you can call it paints. And that's an exaggeration, but in the Netherlands, there are certain standards to be able to call it paint. And that in a nutshell is the primary difference in how paint has evolved there and how paint has evolved here. The birth of paint, as modern paint as we know it now, in an artistic sense and also in a paint coating sense, all derived from the Dutch economy, the maritime economy, painting boats, painting houses. The Holland is in the North Sea, and so how many years is that? Like a 600-year run of the Dutch making paint and the history behind that and the standards they have for making paint. And if you want to sort of describe what's the difference between a paint manufactured there and a paint manufactured here, is paints manufactured here just have a lot of fillers in them. It's kind of like taking a can of Fine Paints of Europe and maybe pouring it into 10 different cans. So you still have the Fine Paints of Europe, but then you fill in calcium carbonate, water, everything else, and you call it a can of paint. I mean, there are gallons of paint you can buy for $9 for new construction. So the main question is, what's the difference in the paints? Paints manufactured on this side of the world and paints manufactured in Holland. And the difference is there are higher grade solids, colorants that are manufactured to be color fast, replicate the colors, whereas I think other manufacturers here, it's sort of from a boardroom, they're drawing up how can we create this paint, manufacture this paint for as little as possible, and market it in a certain way and sell it. In the Netherlands, there's no interior exterior paint. It's paint. It's enamel paint. So the same Holland lac that you would put on a door, exterior door, is the same you'd put on kitchen cabinets. And I think that is the primary difference. I mean, when you open it up and you smell it, it smells like paints that have not been available for a long time, such as Dual-Amyl Eggshell from Benjamin Moore, Pratt & Lambert Cellutone, Vitrolite. Those are products that have not been around for some time. But the Fine Paints of Europe in the oil-based products are traditional oil enamels. They're just paints, they're good paints. And likewise, the water-based paints, the Ecos, alkyd modified, it's not a new technology. I mean, I used to think it was a new technology. The first alkyd modified water-based paints that were like Benjamin Moore Advance. The Dutch have been making alkyd modified paints since the 70s. That's water-based paint that's mixed in with alkyd resins. And traditionally, alkyd resins have only been in solvent-based paints, oil-based paints, linseed oil. And so it's a water-based formula, water cleanup, water reduced, but the resins are alkyd. They're harder, and we use a lot of it. I mean, so that is also a very superior product, much superior than any other alkyd modifieds that I've ever used for durability. And the wall paints, they're, the Eurolux line. In particular, there's a flat paint from Fine Paints of Europe that's the only class 1A rated flat paint, independent lab, and it is far superior for coverage and scrubbability than any other paint. The market is dictated by that the majority of paint that's used is for new construction. That's the majority of all construction materials are used for new building. I mean, I know that's an obvious thing, but for paint, that's what drives paint sales for manufacturers. Whereas in Europe, they're still building things. They're still building things in the Netherlands, but they're not building a track of 600 homes. And it comes down to pricing. So, long story short, the teams here developing the paints know how to develop good paints. There's just not a market for it. Or that's what they've determined, there's not a market for it.